and 7 Spanish angels took another angel home. Hey, I'm Willie Nelson, and you're watching HempRock TV. We don't run, and we don't compromise, we don't quit, we never do.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am MSgt Tony Vance, the voice of Freedom's Voice, sitting here with my grandpa's World War I veterans cap, veterans flight cap, and my Freedom Isn't Free coffee cup. Today we're going to focus on one state, Kentucky. Kentucky and cannabis. Back in 2014, I wrote a piece titled Doing Good for Our Economy and Our State. I was still living in Kentucky at the time, in northern Kentucky. And recently, or at the time, was a recent House Health and Welfare Committee hearing, then discussing the merits of SB, I think it was SB 43, Senate bill to legalize medical cannabis. And at that hearing, State Representative Robert Benvenuti, right, he claimed that he could, and this is a quote, he could fill this committee room with first responders, law enforcement officers, and the parents of dead children based on the effects of marijuana. At the time, 20 states had legalized medical, and some had legalized recreational cannabis use. None of that has happened anywhere else. There's no reason to think it would happen in Kentucky, but that's what he claimed. And you know, are the arguments for continuing the prohibition of marijuana, even for the sick and disabled, so bereft of science and logic that our legislators must embarrass themselves with such ridiculously inflammatory statements? You know, I was at they called it a marijuana forum over in Covington. It was right after I had a marijuana town hall at the VFW in Alexandria, and they had this over in Covington. And it was believe me, it was slanted towards prohibition. And one of the speakers, this drug task force guy, I can't remember his name, stood there and started reading off all the deaths from drugs and alcohol. You know, methamphetamine, this many people die. Alcohol, this many people die. But he never mentioned marijuana. I was sitting in the audience. I was waiting for him to down the list. Never mentioned marijuana. You know why I never mentioned marijuana? Because there are no deaths. Period. You have to eat twice your body weight in marijuana to overdose. It's just simply impossible. And the administrative law judge for the Drug Enforcement Administration issued a ruling long ago that ruled that marijuana was the safest therapeutic substance known to man. Of course, the Drug Enforcement Administration got rid of that real quick, you know. Ending marijuana for industrial, recreational, or medical use will not lead to the downfall of the country. Considering that when I wrote this, 20 states had legalized, and now it's over 30. At the time, 2014, Kentuckians, according to the Kentucky Health Issues poll, favor allowing for medical marijuana by 78%, and that was in 2014. It is estimated that 24 million Americans, and that's probably higher now with the 10 more states legalizing, are regular marijuana users. And half of all Americans have used marijuana at some time in their lives. This probably accounts for the recent polling. Half, just over half in 2014, just over half, 54% of Americans favored ending marijuana prohibition altogether. Just end it. And in the 90s, that's what Portugal did. That was their whole drug scheme. They redid their whole drug scheme. Overdose deaths are down 67%. Drug use is down 60%. It's crazy. But we didn't do that. We doubled down. And Kentucky has never, ever come to the realization that they were scammed. They called it, in the 30s, in the late 30s, early 40s, they called it marijuana because it called it hemp. People in Kentucky would have known, wait, that's our industry. What are you trying? You're going to kill our industry. But they called it marijuana, so Kentuckians voted to kill their own industry. Now, states are, here in Michigan, millions upon millions of dollars in revenue from cannabis sales. It's becoming one of the largest industries in the state. And it is becoming in many states. Marijuana is effective for a host of illnesses. I could even list them all, but from a veteran's point of view, post-traumatic stress and chronic pain. And I just went through cancer. If anybody's been watching this show, you know that. Rick Simpson oil, a high THC marijuana oil, saved my life. But I couldn't have got it in Kentucky. If I'd have stayed in Kentucky, I'd be dead. Ending marijuana prohibition for just medical use will stir millions in economic activity. With the decline in the coal industry and the fact that the soil in Kentucky grows some of the best marijuana in the world, why are we not capitalizing on that? Most importantly, if you pass these upcoming bills, and I think it's HB 136, I mean, they're crappy bills. I didn't see any allowance for treatment for post-traumatic stress. They did mention chronic pain, but they're a host. Autism, epilepsy, I could go on. These bills need to be expanded. They need to be passed, but they need to be expanded and amended because they are definitely inadequate. We could be the leading state in the nation on marijuana, the marijuana industry, if we chose to. Now, some people call for decriminalization. That's a half-butt measure because as a city, I can still make it illegal so my local police force can give people tickets and make money off of it that way. Or I can harass people on the road or anything. It has to be full legalization, just like with alcohol. You know, I can walk into any store, buy alcohol anytime I want. And it is far more the more dangerous drug. And everybody realizes that. You know? Let's think of the current bills to legalize cannabis as a test. I don't know why we've had to wait another 8 years for the assembly to pull their heads out of the nether regions and actually do something for the citizens in Kentucky who need this medicine. And the industry, our eastern part of Kentucky, coal is dying. We need another industry. There you go. If you don't do nothing, then it will all still continue to be underground. The people who buy it won't be age tested. The people who are selling it to you, the black market, why would you want to continue that? None, absolutely none of the terrible things that you said would happen if marijuana were legalized have happened anywhere. It's not full legalization, and enough people will have access to marijuana that if its passage is a bad idea, it'll become obvious pretty quickly. You can change or reverse the law if you want. The prohibitionists, the ones who want to keep prohibition going, have had 85 years to prove the harmfulness of marijuana, and they ain't done it yet. Their effort to link marijuana with lung cancer was a failure. 2,500 subjects, and the result of that study was that people who smoke marijuana on a regular basis get head, neck, and lung cancer at the same rate as people who don't smoke at all. The researchers said there's some kind of cancer preventer in marijuana that should be looked at. Of course, we've never looked at it. The 1970 Controlled Substances Act does not allow the federal government to support any research that does not show harm. It does not show harm. And they've had 85 years to show harm, and they haven't been able to do it. Ending prohibition is Mark Twain. I want to be in Cincinnati when the world ends because Cincinnati's 20 years behind everybody else. Well, Kentucky is 30. This was our industry, and we gave it away based on some bull. On top of which, the whole marijuana is a prohibited thing was a scam to begin with. And I'm going to go over it real quick. When the 1937 Tax Stamp Act was declared unconstitutional, they came in 1969. They came back with the Controlled Substances Act in 1970. Marijuana was temporarily placed in Schedule 1, dangerous and having no medical value, right? Until the Shaver Commission, appointed by Nixon, came out with this report, Drugs in America. Then they would decide what to do with marijuana. Well, they came out with their report, and they said that marijuana, remember, this is 1972 when the report finally came out. And it said marijuana should be decriminalized and that drugs were a medical problem and not a criminal problem. Nixon felt betrayed, declared the war on drugs, because he had another use for it. And in 1993, in an interview by a journalist named Dan Baum, John Ehrlichman, Nixon's aide, was interviewed. And Mr. Baum was questioning him about the drug war, and Ehrlichman's pretty old at this time. He said, "You want to know what this is all about?" He said the Nixon campaign and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, blacks and anti-war protesters. We knew we couldn't make it against the law to be black or against the war, but if we could associate the blacks with heroin and the anti-war protesters with marijuana, we could criminalize them heavily, break up their meetings, arrest their leaders, and vilify them night after night on the television. Were we lying about the drugs? Of course we were. So there you have it. The whole damn thing was a scam to harass Nixon's political enemies. Why is the state of Kentucky continuing to harass Nixon's political enemies after he and most of them are dead? Time to end this ridiculous prohibition and get on with it. Kentucky is shooting itself in the head by continuing a prohibition of marijuana. And I'm sorry, if there's an 8% drop in the use of alcohol, maybe that'll save some lives. Who knows? But Kentucky is wasting time and money, and people are fleeing the state to access this medicine. I had to, and had I not, I'd be dead right now. Think of my voice coming from the grave. As far as the cancer goes, the doc wants a few more treatments. The scan can't see anything. All the tumors can't be seen. So we're in good shape. The neuropathy's pretty bad, but we're doing all right. So I hope my own state and legislators can pull their heads out of their nether regions, do the right thing, the honest thing, and the ethical thing, and pass a comprehensive cannabis legalization bill now. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Y'all take care, and I'll tell you what, we'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Willie Nelson, and the Willie Nelson Teapot Party and I endorse Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access.
Just roll me up and smoke me when I die.